I spent probably the majority of my career in the DoD national security field, a lot on the cyber offensive side, and really always dealing with data and data systems, and everything around data, and most importantly, protecting data. And it's important because all of those experiences that myself and Jonathan, my co-founder, who you're going to hear from today as well, really sort of are, kind of make up the DNA of what we do here at RackTop, and what we've brought to market to solve some of these most difficult data security problems we're facing today. But it's not really me you're here to talk about, or we're here to talk about. It's about this guy, right? And this is data. And about 80 to 90% of any organization's digital assets is kind of made up of data, unstructured data, right? So these are all of the things which we as organizations are storing and keeping, and that subsequently get ransomed or stolen when we're talking about security incidents. And then over the next 3 years, data as it sits today is going to triple. So if you sort of think about that, and you sort of think about the last 30 years worth of data that's been created, and tripling that over the next 3 years, clearly we have a data problem. But if you sort of, if I take off my data storage hat and put on my security cyber hat, what I see is a major security problem, because not only do I have all of this data and I have the utility problem of actually storing it, but I also have the problem of securing it wherever it may be, local, on-prem, at the edge, in the cloud. And so the more data we create, and there's no end in sight, the bigger security problem we have. And it's really because these guys, right? The bad guys. And so, we sort of see over and over again, and all of us who are in the security field know that this is ultimately who we're trying to keep out or keep away from what we're doing. And when it comes to data, it's keeping this guy away from what we're trying to protect. But we're not doing a very good job, because, it's predicted that over the next 10 years, so, in sort of the time span of where we're going to see triple the amount of data, and probably even more than that, it's estimated that there's going to be $256 billion worth of ransomware damage alone. So obviously there's a significant problem that we're facing today, specifically with ransomware, obviously, because it's a front burner issue, but in data security itself, what we're employing today as security professionals is not necessarily solving the data security problems that are facing us. And so, if you sort of just think about that for a second and take a step back, we're spending $150 billion a year on cyber solutions, and what's the problem, right? Why do we continue to have these data-related attacks that are continuing to affect organizations that have good security practices, organizations that have sophisticated security infrastructures and architectures? We've seen major corporations, even over the last 6 weeks, continue to be hit with ransomware attacks, specifically because they're data-oriented attacks, right? So it's easy to sort of put it in that context. But big organizations like like an NVIDIA, or that kind of have sophisticated infrastructure, are still susceptible to what's happening here. And so what is really the problem with the security solutions that we're employing today, and why is it not really addressing the issue? And if you sort of think back, 30 years ago, the data storage market and the cyber markets kind of were born at the same time, right? They were sort of born in sort of the 90s. Organizations are connecting to the internet, and it's driving security. You have, infrastructures with the first wave of digital transformation that are employing new architectures and driving shared storage systems, right? So you had these two big markets, but they grew up in parallel. Data storage always sort of being in the trusted core of the infrastructure, right, inside the walls. And security really focused on protecting and building the walls around the organization. And that's sort of the way, from a security perspective, we grew up. And it's really solving these doors and windows problems are where a lot of the solutions, a lot of our friends, a lot of our colleagues, and us in general over our careers have really been focused on, creating solutions and solving problems to keep the bad guy out, right? Keep people out, and then make sure that they don't get through multiple layers of protection. But what we've seen time and time again with the cloud or the edge or work from home or whatever we're doing, that sort of approach is no longer really sufficient when we're really talking about data, right? And so if we're thinking about data-oriented attacks, we're not really doing a great job of solving those using the sort of the doors and the windows approach. We need to do that. There's no question about it. But we kind of need to reorient ourselves around actually solving a data problem by flipping the focus from, instead of sort of this outside-in approach, how the cyber industry was sort of created, and look at it from the inside out, right? Look at it from the data's perspective, right? So we tend to focus a lot as cyber professionals or security professionals on access control and identity protections, all very necessary, but they do get breached. We've seen them get breached. And then you have the situation where you have what seemingly looks like a good actor all of a sudden being a bad actor. That takes an external threat, it makes it an internal threat. These are the kind of problems that keep us up at night, right? These are the kind of things that are really hard for our current security solutions to actually detect and find out. And if you're thinking about like managed security providers or your SOC, they're being faced with these bigger haystacks to try and find smaller needles. And so we need to continue to innovate in the cyber community, but more importantly, we need to think about the problem, data-oriented attack problems, from a different perspective. So in the 90s, it was keep the bad guys out, keep them, connect to the internet, but keep everybody out that we don't want to access our data. But 2022, really the problem is about securing the data, protecting the data, and really it's about changing perspective, which is what we're here to talk to you about today. Cyber storage in general is it's very new. What we've been doing is not new, but the word cyber storage is new. This is a category that's been labeled by Gartner just last year, just in July of 2021. And really what it is, it's storage systems that can actively detect and stop attacks in real time. So think about your SIM and your SOAR and your firewall and your IPS and your IDS, and you jam them inside a data storage operating system. And that's what cyber storage is. And that's precisely what we're doing. All the things that you would do externally at the network layer, also being done at the data layer, at the data plane, so that once all of those defenses have been breached, you can actually be the last line of defense against having a data exfiltration attack or a sabotage or ransomware attack on your data. And so this is sort of a new paradigm or a new way to sort of take this 30-year-old data industry and this 30-year-old cyber industry and smash them together to really solve some of these harder data-oriented attacks that we're facing today. Legacy systems, legacy storage systems, they're really not smart when it comes to security. They have access controls that are tied into Active Directory. We can breach those, right? A lot of people use admin credentials to do everything. They have access to all the files. You can see how this goes. You have one supply chain attack. You go ahead and overtake a service account. You use a service account to sort of probe the network. You go ahead and you tag into a share. You exfiltrate data. Nobody finds you. You're done. You've done the damage. We've seen this story a couple times. We've seen this story many times. It's because the systems aren't sophisticated enough to actually understand what's going on at the core of the network. They are at the edge, but they're not at the core. And at the end of the day, the bad guys steal the data. They don't steal the network. And so, when we talk about cyber storage and just sort of from a NIST perspective, because, we kind of want to apply the security principles and security framework to what we're doing here, from a data perspective, you have sort of the 5 functional areas of the NIST cybersecurity framework. From a data perspective, we sort of break those down into 3 different subsections or 3 different phases, right? You're either before an attack, you're during an attack, or you're after an attack. you're always in one of these states of being, right? You're never not. So you're worried about cyber hygiene, minimize your attack vectors, right? I want to make sure that I've employed great process. I want to make sure that I have compliance to make sure that what I did yesterday is in play today and is in play tomorrow. People make changes. We want to make sure that, you know, it's a prove it type of scenario. We have to do that on a regular basis. We want to detect when bad things are happening so that we could actually stop an attack from happening and minimize the damage that's done. Attacks will happen. We all know this, but we want to minimize, when detect and minimize. And third, we want to facilitate remediation and recovery. Now, if you listen to what's being said in the data storage space about security and cyber today, you'll see a lot of people are talking about recover, backups. That's one area, right? That's one part of what you should be doing. And it's not effective, as we've seen with Colonial Pipeline, as we've seen over and over again. The recovery aspect is a really hard way to solve an active security problem. So really, the way we think about it, we don't think about each one of these 5 as individuals. We think about all 5 of these functional areas together, unified, because even at the micro level where they're implemented within this data storage product, they all have to work together to be able to solve this problem. And this is what we're going to show you today, which is our product called the Brickstore Security Platform. And what we've done is we've taken a data storage platform that can fit in any environment, that you don't need to learn anything special. You don't need to be a security expert. Any infrastructure and operations storage, administrator could implement this solution and immediately be able to take advantage of advanced security as if they had been a security professional their whole lives. And we've integrated these capabilities directly into the platform, ultimately so that any organization could protect their data as if it were a national secret. And that's